Welcome to Forward Physio, the show that gives you high-quality information about injury and rehabilitation, performance, and health. My name is Noah Mandel, and I'm a resident physiotherapist from Toronto, Canada. I created this podcast to provide you with educational content, not medical advice. Please seek advice from a qualified healthcare professional if you are currently dealing with a health-related concern. If you enjoyed the podcast, please consider leaving a review. I would deeply appreciate it, and you would also be doing your part in helping the podcast grow so that we could provide this information to more and more people. Hi everyone, welcome back. I am so excited to share this one with you because I had the pleasure of speaking with someone that I really look up to, and that person is Greg Lehman. Greg, who like myself lives in Toronto, Ontario, is one of the most well-respected experts in the world of physiotherapy. Every profession needs somebody like Greg. One of Greg's strongest attributes as a thinker is his ability to not just challenge other people's beliefs, but his own. Despite having read more research than most people and having the ability to cite just about any scientific paper from the top of his head, Greg remains curious, humble, and does not pretend like he has all the answers. His ability to be comfortable in the gray area and challenges his own biases in others is what makes him such a valuable part of this profession, and he continues to push the needle forward year after year. Greg has a really strong influence on how I think and how I practice as a clinician. So again, it was such a pleasure to have him on the podcast. As you listen to this podcast, I hope you appreciate the content that Greg delivers, but even more than that, I hope you really appreciate the critical thinking and the open-mindedness behind the things that he's saying. As you can tell, I'm a fan. And if you don't know Greg, I hope you are too after you listen to this. So without further ado, I bring to you Greg Lehman. All right. Greg, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I guess I wanted to start off by congratulating you. I see that you're improving on your backflips and you're getting a little more confident on a skateboard, so well done there.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but yeah, I'm maintaining on my backflips. There's no more improvement.
There's a period where you weren't able to do them, right?
Oh, well, it's because I have frozen shoulder. Yeah. Yeah. I only picked it up 5 years ago, so I had like a good learning curve at the start, and now it's getting harder to pick up new tricks.
Fair enough.
Anyway,
you're still dealing with the shoulder?
No, it's awesome. It's 100%. I can hang on it now.
Nice. Yeah. Okay, great. Cool. So for those who don't know you, Greg, do you mind just giving us a little bit of a background on yourself? You have a background in chiro and physio, education, just about everything. So for those who don't know your story, do you mind sharing it?
Yeah, academically, a bachelor's in kinesiology, so it was a lot of biomechanics and exercise physiology. Then I did a master's in spine biomechanics at Waterloo. When I was there, I was a strength and conditioning coach at Laurier. My master's was on like spine biomechanics, but like more manual therapy, and then exercise biomechanics, but primarily EMG, some kinematics, where you put sensors on the back to measure how it's moving. Then I went to chiro college. They were awesome. They let me have a research program. It was pretty mediocre, but we got to do like a lot of fun research projects that otherwise wouldn't get done because they're kind of small potatoes, but I really liked them. And then I was in clinical practice for years, and then I went back to school and got a master's in physio at Queen's because we lived in Kingston. And then I was in practice for years, and then I realized I wanted to teach again and not do any research. So the past 8 years, I'm still in clinical practice, but most of my time is spent like teaching and clinical education and all that stuff. That's it.
That teaching, it's not in universities, or is it just guest lectures sometimes?
No, I don't think I could do that. It's been my own weekend seminar and all that stuff. Right. I have two. Okay. There's like the Reconciling Biomechanics with Pain Science, which is like 8 years old now. And then a running one, which is like the running manifestation of Reconciling Biomechanics.
Got it. So I'm sure we're going to get into a lot of running. I took the first one, Reconciling Biomechanics with Pain Science. That was great. It's so far the only continuing education course I've actually done, but it really influenced my practice since then. It really made things much more simple in the clinic for me.
Yeah, we
So,
had a good group though. That like my course is really dependent on the group sometimes. Like once you get a good group of people who are talking and sharing and finding common threads, I think you lucked out. The other ones suck.
I was just gonna say you're not doing a great job selling it right now.
I know. No, I might have even have said it. My joke is like, this course depends on people interacting and talking. So if you don't like the course, it's your fault.
That's a good cop out. Just blame everyone else.
Yeah, it's not me, it's you. When patients don't get better, no, it must have been them.
Right.
It was perfect.
But when they do get better,
oh, it's all me. Even if it's like within the year, they stopped seeing me. My effect just took time, just had to percolate.
So, Greg, you have a very big interest in running, and you were saying how the reconciling biomechanics with pain science it sort of bleeds into your new running course. A big overarching theme in both of these, although I haven't taken the running course yet, is movement optimism, which is
Yes.
a term that you've coined. And I think it would be really good for everybody who's listening to this to get an understanding of what movement optimism is. And I think that will set up a really good framework for the rest of our conversation.
Yeah, it's easiest to see it in what it's not, and there's certainly overlap. I do have a blog on my website from 6 years ago called movement optimism versus the kinesiopathological model, and sort of like what the difference is. And that's really what it is. It's a reaction to the idea, and running was horrible for this for years and still is, that there's there's a right way to run, and deviations from that running style will predispose one to injury. So you see that in the running world, like don't let your knees cave in, don't have knee abduction, don't have a lot of pronation. You have to have lots of hip extension. And then we also see that in the lifting world, in the sitting world, the right posture. And to me, I've always had issues with that model. This has not been new to me. It just ignores the idea that we have an incredible variability in how we all move, the right way for us to move, and it ignores the ability of the person to adapt. Like just like if you see someone with lots of pronation, you'd be like, wicked. You're doing that because you're storing and releasing elastic energy, and that's how you absorb load. It doesn't mean it's inherently faulty. They just might have a different structure than someone in terms of their bones, since that's how they move, or they could have different elastic properties in their connective tissue, right? So this is this is it. That's it fundamentally. Like it's not. I'm not saying like how someone moves isn't always irrelevant. I mean, if someone has an Achilles tendinopathy and they forefoot strike, then it wouldn't be it would be reasonable to maybe try having them heel striking, right? So the movement optimism approach is that since there's no one right way to run, we have lots of options if we need them. That's it. It's so simple. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But it's hard for a lot of people to grasp because we're so ingrained in that kinesiopathological model.
Yeah, I thought I'd moved on, but I did a seminar last year, like an online thing, and I couldn't believe it, like how it was Dysfunction Junction. It was with the Canadian Physio Association. Just like, oh no, make sure, it was like wrist pain. Make sure you check their scapular kinematics. Even though you thought you checked them, really find out, make sure it's moving in the right way, because if it's like slightly off, that's why they have elbow pain.
Right. Yeah, I was speaking to Ben Cormack about this, and he's like, we have moved on from that, but only within our small little echo chamber. And as a whole, I think a lot of people are still stuck in it.
No, yeah.
So on that notion of faulty biomechanics and there being one best way to run, a big claim is that heel striking is really bad for you. But you were just saying that heel striking could be a viable solution for someone with an Achilles issue. So how would you go about dismantling that claim that heel striking is bad for your knees, or that it will cause injury for runners?
I mean, At an individual level, you can often ask people like, how do you like to show them that they naturally want to run this way and they're comfortable, like, and say, what, like, do you view that the body is that stupid that'll cause this movement pattern that's so horrible? You know, that's one way to do it. You can go like a population level and say like 80% of people heel strike when they run, and it's not just, and it's also at an elite level, right? And then, or you can go the performance way, and there's, I think it's Laura Anderson has a nice systematic review, or at least narrative review on it, of how heel striking isn't less efficient. You know, when you run forefoot striking, it might feel softer, but that cushioning will come at a cost, right? That like like there's the cost of cushioning there. So like heel striking is not inherently less efficient. You could also get into the nitty gritty of biomechanics with people, which will surprise people. It's like we got caught up on, because it's easy to measure, which is impact loading. So when you strike the ground, there's a ground reaction force in the vertical direction. And 10, 15 years ago, when people were big into barefoot running, they found that barefoot running with a forefoot strike would really decrease the initial peak of when you hit the ground. Total peak was the same, but that rate of loading was less. And so the assumption there, the surrogate measure of injury, was that rate of loading, or the impact peak, was associated with injury. And it made intuitive sense. And so if you decrease that, maybe you would decrease your injury rate, and heel striking would cause this impact loading. But then biomechanists were saying, well, no, really, maybe impact loading isn't related to injury. And just because you have a high impact peak, it doesn't mean that it's easier on, say, the bones or the muscles. And then you look at, this is the work of Emily, I always say her name wrong, Matejevich, you should have her on. And she's like, you know, if you have a bone stress injury in the tibia and you strike the ground with your forefoot, and just because it's softer and sounds softer, it doesn't mean that there's less strain on the tibia, because most of the strain that a bone experiences comes from the muscles. So the strain can actually be greater. And there was actually, and this is the thing, a lot of the things we think were myth busting. I know of papers from 2008 saying that, really rudimentary ones. So it's not a new idea. So like, there's not even less strain on the bone if you run with a forefoot strike. It could be more. So that's cool. There's a shit ton of ways. You surprised me with that one. I think I got them all.
You must have answered 1,000 times though.
No, I don't. Like, with my patients, I'm like, how do you want to run? And sometimes it's enough just to say, no, it's totally fine. Take a look at your friends who are uninjured. I guarantee they're heel striking. Like, that's the way I do with patients. And if they want to know more, then we go into that stuff.
Right.
Like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, yeah, you can heel strike. Go for it.
Do you find that people often come to you really open to hearing your thoughts because you're well known? Because I don't have that same experience.
No, I'm really lucky. I get a lot of that stuff. Or I don't have to do as much convincing anymore, and I get to do more like coaching, or people kind of want to come and just want advice, and that'd be a sounding board. That's always really nice. That's a nice way of coaching, is people already have these ideas and you get to like support them, and you're on the right track.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that must be really nice.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting that the heel striking isn't necessarily more stressful on the bone than the forefoot striking. And I've heard, I think it was Jason Torrey say this. He was saying how, although one way of running might not necessarily cause injuries more than others, it can shift the stress elsewhere. And maybe that could exacerbate an issue. So is that what you were saying earlier with why it could be more favorable to run with the heel strike if you have an Achilles issue?
Yeah, absolutely. So it would, I mean, there's still going to be Achilles load. It's just at a different time. And so or here's the thing with heel striking. What it could be is people are taking a very long stride, and so they have a low cadence when they run. And when you do that, you tend to heel strike. So we would associate that long stride, which would probably have more loads on the knee, with the heel striking, it's not really the heel striking, it's that they have a really long stride. That's the issue. So often you tell people shorten up your stride, and then they run with a midfoot strike or a forefoot strike, right? And then their knee might feel better, but it's because they both decreased their stride length and went to a different foot strike. But then like with what Jason's saying, where you want to be cautious there is if someone shortens their stride and then goes to a forefoot strike, what's that now going to do to the Achilles? It's a new load that it's not used to, right? And so now they'll put different stress on the foot now, and then they might be susceptible to that type of injury because they're just not prepared for it.
Right. So you mentioned barefoot shoes as well. And I think you said that there's more of a tendency for people to forefoot strike when they're wearing maybe a less supportive shoe. Why is that?
Yeah. So it depends where you run. If you just run on a treadmill, you might not change. But if you go in barefoot and you run on asphalt and you have a long stride and you heel strike, you're very likely to shift to a shorter step and land on your forefoot because it just doesn't hurt. Because it would hurt if you did it. Except I did this in Norway years ago with the group. We went outside, and I swear 90% of them, because they're Vikings, didn't change, and they all kept heel striking. It's like they had the fattest heel pads in the world. It was so weird. but sometimes people will just change automatically, right?
Okay.
And the people have been saying this stress shifting for years. It's not always true. Like if you're running and you take shorter strides and keep heel striking, you won't really shift the stress anywhere. You're not going to increase the stress on your ankle and decrease it on your knee. You'll just decrease it on your knee. There won't be much change at the ankle. I know I keep hearing people saying you're just moving the stress around. Not really. Not every running intervention leads to that. I'm getting academic here. Sorry. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Is there good evidence for footwear and how that might protect against injuries or help people recover from injuries when it comes to running? Because there is a huge market for this. Yeah,
I'm a simpleton, and I went to a talk in 1998. That's how old I am, by Bino Nig, and he really blew out the footwear paradigm back then about pronation and all that stuff. And he really just said, try a shoe that feels comfortable. So I never got caught up in footprint and shoe, like fitting the shoe to the foot and all that stuff. And so the research kind of supports that. In general, the systematic reviews. What's the one? There's a really good one. Sorry, I'll get you to link it if people want it. But the Agresta, that's who did it. She did a systematic review saying no. And even my bias, which is just choose a shoe for performance and comfort, that actually doesn't have any support either. That's just, you might as well choose one that feels good. However, this is really cool. If you want to challenge your beliefs, I don't think the shoe can do it. I don't think you should get a shoe to match pronation, all that stuff. There is a paper, one by Williams, which is a reanalysis of a paper by Malisu, where they actually sort of said and it was a prospective study, they were able to decrease injury risk by matching the shoe to the foot, which is a real outlier, And so right now you would say, I don't think so, but maybe. And then they went on to say if shoes will help pronation related injuries. That was the reanalysis.
I see.
But I don't think it was powered enough to really make strong conclusions. And they were open to that. They criticized themselves as well. So if I've just confused you, that's probably the right take. Don't have a strong opinion on this. Sorry.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So when there's conflicting evidence on a topic, I guess it just means that you don't need to have a concrete answer about it, but I guess we can be a little bit less certain about it.
Yeah. So look at it this way: you've tried. Let's say you've chosen a shoe because it feels good, and it's lighter or whatever for performance or something like that, and you keep getting injuries. It's not unreasonable to say, okay, well maybe I'm the type of person where I might respond to a shoe matched to my foot type, and you tend to have a high navicular drop or something like that. And you're like, I'm going to try a stability shoe. And then boom, it works for you. So it's totally fine. And it's the same thing with gait modifications. You've tried to run a certain way, it didn't work for you, and you're like, well, I'll try running this other way for a bit, and for whatever reason that resonates with you and it works. We just got to be open to this. There's just too many unknowns right now to have really strong opinions.
Yeah. So more about trial and error then, right?
Yeah. Like everything.
Yeah. There's another big market for gait analysis, and it's just a huge area where people look at how you're running and then try and find the faulty mechanics and try and improve on those things. And you sort of touched on why that might not be helpful for everyone, or potentially why it could be. But you just said as well that we could try and change someone's gait when they run and see if it works. Now, I've also heard the argument that that's really difficult to do sometimes.
Totally.
Is that the case in your experience? And what does the evidence say on that?
To me, I actually think the evidence is weak. There's a lot of research, but the papers often have 10 to 15 subjects in them. They don't have a control group. And people are sort of, and I still do it because I don't need a lot of evidence to give something a try if I know that it's not very risky or something like that. So the evidence isn't that strong, surprisingly. I get, like, look at it this way. If with a lot of these gait retraining studies, if you traded gait retraining with ultrasound, then our profession would say, oh, never look at that study. There's no control group. There's only 12 people. There's all these flaws. But because it's not a passive modality, and it's a gait retraining study, we're like, we can give it a try. Like, we just have to be more accepting and know that there'll be more research done in the future. It still gets like tentatively recommended in a clinical practice guideline because we're so goddamn inconsistent. Sorry.
It's okay.
My take on gait retraining is, if you're not injured, I don't do it. I'll look at people run and I'll film them and I'll just tell them how great they're running and what's going on. And I often inoculate them. And I'm like, see how your knees come in here? That's totally fine. That's your running style. Someone's going to tell you in the future that's faulty. It's not. That's just your style. Don't worry about it. And you'll figure out the best way to run for you. We're self-optimizing when it comes to running. If somebody's injured, then potentially we talk about making gait changes. And I think you can just do them temporarily. That's it. It's just a subtle change, like changing cadence or something like that. If someone's chronically in pain, like they have knee OA, and then you're like, well, this is a persistent pain problem that's unlikely to be healed, and they want to keep running, then you might think, let's go with a 4-foot strike and a shorter stride, just to keep, because we know that will change the stress, and that often will help people, right? So you're just playing around here, which is all right.
Yeah. So you said when people are in pain, you might try and change it temporarily. And I think temporarily is an interesting word there.
Yeah, because I don't know what that means. It's like the word capacity. We just throw that out there. Yeah, I mean, sometimes people just like, sorry, go ahead. I'm anticipating your question, but
it's okay. I think you know where I'm going with it. But I guess the assumption there is that the way that they were running isn't necessarily the original cause of their pain. Because if you're okay changing it temporarily, that means that you're okay for them returning back to the old way that they ran.
Yeah.
So what's the thought process there? How can you be sure that it wasn't the way that they were running before that's the issue?
Oh, you can't. It's like, look at it this way. You could have some knee pain for whatever reason, and then you go walk stairs and it hurts on the stairs. You don't say the stairs was the cause of it. You just say it manifests, right? Especially if they don't have any. It just manifests when they're walking stairs. So I'm like, you have knee pain. It manifests when you're running. That makes sense because there's more stress on the knee. Oh, okay, why don't we change this up for a little bit? And there's lots of different ways to do it. You could just have them run more hills or something like that. Have them avoid downhills. You could just change their pace. You know what I mean? These are gait modifications as well. You're just not consciously saying, let's change how you run. let's have you run on the track. Let's have you run in the trail system, right? This is gait. It's not technically retraining, but it's gait modifying.
Right.
Right. And so we were like, let's just do these modifications to keep you running, and things will run their course and settle down. That simple.
It's the same effect as gait retraining. Either way, you're just sort of changing how someone's moving for a little bit while things calm down.
Exactly. And then you have a good question. There certainly could be a point where someone just can't adapt to anything and they can't go back to their style. So they'll have to make some. But I think you would only know that after years or something like that. Just in the short term, it's hard to say.
A lot of frustration for the person that can't adapt, for sure.
Yeah, but then part of the messaging there, and I think we need to get better at this with everything, is like successful lifetime running is not a pain-free runner. That's really unfair to put pressure on yourself. And anyone who says that everyone should be running pain-free, I have an issue with that. Successful runners have pain all the time, or at least they have bouts on a regular basis, and they just figure out ways to work around it. And as soon as you accept that things can hurt sometimes, it takes the stress off. And for me, it removes the catastrophizing and rumination. You're like, oh, my ankle is shitty today. I'm just not going to run as fast. I'm not going to do those hills. I'm going to change something up. I'm going to add some hard hiking in here or something like that.
I'm really happy you brought this up, because I did want to ask you if it was okay to run in pain. And for a lot of people that hear that and aren't very aware of you and your messaging, that can be really shocking, right? Because oftentimes pain is looked at as something that isn't okay, and it's a sign that things are going to get worse. And I just had a patient recently has a flexor hallucis longus tendon issue, and it's been around for a year now, and there hasn't been any running in a year. And when I asked her if, that's what we sort of ended off on last time. If I asked her, do you know if running makes it worse? And it's been so long where she's not even sure at this point. Like, it's okay to have a little bit when you run. And now I feel that way because I'm heavily influenced by you. So can you sort of explain the rationale and why it is okay to run with a little bit of pain, and when isn't it?
Yeah. So let's start with that first. So you have to know that they're safe, right? This is any time anyone has pain anywhere with low back pain. I don't want them to have cancer. I don't want an infection. You have to know that they're safe, and you have to understand the problem. If people have like ankle pain, you also want to make sure that that's not some like rheumatological condition. They also have like swollen fingers or changes in their nails and stuff like that. So we still got to be a good clinician here. Now, a person like that, they could still run with that pain, but we also want to make sure that they're being co-managed by a rheumatologist and has some like medication as well. So we got to understand the pain problem here. And as soon as we understand that, then we can go. Or like you don't want it to be like a stress fracture or something like that. Or if it is a stress fracture, you need to know. And then if it's like low risk and they have pain while they're finishing their marathon that they've been training 8 months for, you could say, you know what, you can do the last 10K with it hurting if it's a stress fracture, because this is like a low risk stress fracture. It's going to suck for a while, but if you want to push it, you're allowed to. But if it's high risk, like in the hip and it's a femoral neck, you would say, you should probably not poke into pain here because it can snap in half. You could die or whatever. You know what I mean? Like that, like you gotta understand it. So as soon as you understand it, then you're like, yeah, let's go for it here. And then if it's, I'm pretty cool with backing off at the initial stages, right? Or you try like a few weeks of just nudging into pain, and then, or if it's the time of year where it's just base building, you'd be like, oh, let's just take it easy. Let's do more walking. Let's do more cross training. You don't always have to poke into pain. Then we would start poking the pain with these persistent things: knee OA, greater trochanteric pain syndrome, Achilles tendinopathy, that's just been around forever, that's just like, or they just have that wonky knee syndrome. My knee's always sore. And like for those people, yeah, just accepting some and slowly building their mileage and all of those things, that's when you got to make that decision. It's the living well with pain approach.
Yeah. So this sort of gets back or gets into an idea that I've noticed that I've struggled with myself recently. And I'm starting to question my own beliefs on this. And I would love for you to dismantle my own beliefs. And it sort of gets into the idea of wanting to build someone back up to run if they've been avoiding it for a long amount of time. So I saw someone recently with bilateral knee pain, ruled out anything very serious. Seems like it's just kneecap pain. And they have avoided running for the past 2 months or so, and have been avoiding, lifting in ways that are really uncomfortable for their knees. And I realized that I have a tendency to not get them back into running right away. In a lot of cases, I think I've noticed that in my head. I'm thinking, okay, we need to build up your capacity, whatever that means. Maybe lift some weights, and then that will help you get back into running. So I guess this is a 2-part question. Number one, do runners get injured because they're not lifting weights or because they're not strong enough? And then the other one is it okay to just start running right away if someone's been avoiding it for a while and you've ruled out anything serious?
Yeah,
I apologize if it's a
this
bit loaded.
This is my favorite. I've had these debates forever, and again, my pat answer is we do both because we can't know, right? But I've heard people say you need to earn the right to run. You need to do all these. You have to be able to do a single leg squat test 10 times and 20 calf races. And I'm like, no, you don't. You can just go run. We shouldn't be ignoring like the SAID principle, right? The best thing that prepares you to run is to run. Those other things might build up additional attributes that have a halo effect that help you as well. But I would do them all together. I think we can just start running for the vast majority of people, and then the body will adapt. And it's just a question of getting the dosage right. So I do have a blog, and there's like a whole section in the course that it's just called Running as Rehab. That should be the fundamental of your rehab, and everything else is an adjunct. All of our strength training and all of that stuff, those are adjuncts to running. That's really my point. And so like, people talk about strength, right? And you have to say, what do you mean by strength? Like the ability to produce force. Because you can increase your force production 30% in like 3 to 6 weeks of training. Why would that make the tissue more resilient? That's like a nervous system adaptation where you just got better at recruiting motor units. How is the tissue stronger now? Or why would there be less nociception if you just increase strength, right? So that's why you actually won't see, and it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, just hasn't been tested. You don't see quadriceps strength as a risk factor for future patellofemoral pain, except in military recruits. It's certainly, weak hips is certainly not a risk factor for kneecap pain in runners. In fact, you tend to see like greater hip strength being associated with kneecap pain. There's confounding variables there for sure. Maybe the stronger person is a better athlete. They just train more and all that stuff, but whatever. So it's really not so cut and dry. You have to ask what people mean by strength and stuff like that. So I don't think people need to strength train to be a healthy runner, but I think it can certainly help some people. It's just not. It's just I still advocate it because I want to cover all of my bases. But does that answer your question? Is that what you're looking for?
It does. It does. And I think it's really interesting what you were saying about the increase in force production based off of the nervous system adapting in the short term and not the actual tissues becoming stronger or whatever.
So how would that increase tissue capacity? Because you can, increase your leg press force. Right. And strength is very specific. It certainly carries over. But like, what's running strength versus weight room strength? Right. I know you, if you can go out and run 5 minutes with me, then I know you're strong enough to run.
Right.
Because you just did it. That's the test. There's all these people who are like, oh, before you run, you should do skipping and hopping. Why don't you just run? If they can run 10 seconds, well, that's our prescription. Go for 20 minutes. Every 2 minutes, run 10 seconds. Awesome. There, you just did, I don't know the math right away. You just did 100 seconds of running. Next week, let's do 200 seconds.
Yeah.
Right? That'll cause the adaptation.
Yeah. I think I'm certainly guilty of this. And I've actually spoken to you about this when I was taking your course, but I see at the clinic a lot of people coming off of ACL injuries, ACL surgeries, and maybe this is a bit of a different realm. And
Yeah.
I was asking you about the MICU's return to run checklist for people with or coming back from ACL surgeries. And part of that is making sure that their quads are 70% symmetrical in terms of the force that they could produce. And then, as you mentioned, doing some hop tests and doing some calf raises. So is that population different?
So I think Mick has that because they're not returning to running. Running is the stepping stone to playing field sports. That's I think if it was just returning to running, that's where you could have the debate. And the idea there, and I really like it. This is a good question of like, when do you have to be specific? So, well, you know this, but I'll say it for everyone. It's like certain injuries that we have, like especially a structural one, our body's predisposition is to protect that and to unload it. And that becomes our habit. We see it in the spine when people are afraid to move and all that stuff. So we see it in the knee. So when they run, it's ironic, but they don't bend their knee as much, right? So what they'll say, the knee is underloaded, right? And I've had this debate. I'm like, well, so what? That's when you take shorter steps, you're underloading the knee. That's the whole point, to help someone out with kneecap. So we're very inconsistent in how we view load in our things. And so the idea there is that person, it's fine to underload it when you're running. But where it might be a problem is the underloading or the less loading when you're running it's a canary in the coal mine. That's in and of itself, that's not problematic. It's a symptom that the knee might not be as healthy as it is. So that's why you still want to do long-term strength training, because it might be telling you that there's something up with the system, the ecosystem of the knee itself. And it shows up when they're running. But it's not, because I'll have these people will say, well, Greg, you're underloading the knee when they're running. You can't have them run. I'm like, so do you want them to walk? Wouldn't that be even more underloading? Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Or,
yeah.
So should they take longer strides when they run and not have short steps? So it's really is like, that's the canary in the coal mines, the underloading. I don't think it's problematic inherently as they run like that, but if it just shows you that their knee is still weak and not as healthy as it could be. And if they're returning to a field sport or maybe long-term joint health, you should probably address the strength there.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bit convoluted. So I apologize to everyone like that. I've been trying to write a blog on that to put it all together, but it's messy. But again, this is the thing. In practice, it doesn't matter. I would be like, if you just want to get back to running, let's start you running, even with this underloading or this protective strategy. And let's see how it goes. And let's keep doing strength training as well to build you up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's like a checklist people need there.
Yeah. If you were working with someone who was coming off of an ACL surgery, at what point do you think you'd be okay with them returning to run? You know, you're saying you could just try running, but you certainly wouldn't do that post-op day one.
So I'm really cool with listening to experts like Mick on this stuff. I really appreciate, he's seen way more people than I have with ACLs. So I'm all right with if someone said we should wait until at least, like, I believe in respecting tissue sometime. So I think they would probably say 4 to 6 months or something like that. I'd be pretty cool with that, with having, and I know it's always supposed to be like criterion-based progression, but I think waiting on certain timelines sometimes is all right as well.
Yeah,
so
I think it's often 3 months, but of course having the criteria there is being met as well is important in their mind.
Yeah, those are tough ones. It just depends what the goal is there. And I don't want to have a strong opinion there. I just really like talking about that area because I find it fascinating.
It is. And another thing that I find fascinating related to this is this whole paradox or this inconsistency between underloading and loading. And you said something before that I thought was really profound and really changed how I viewed this. But there is an argument that people who are overweight are putting too much stress on their knee. And you pointed out that that's really inconsistent, because what would we do with those people in a lot of cases? We'd get them to lift some weights and put more stress through their knee. Could you sort of explain your reasoning and your thought process around that?
Oh, it's the profession has a huge problem with what we think of stress. They'll be like, don't let your knees cave in because it increases the load on the lateral patellar facet 30%. And I'm like, well, and then they go tell people to do squats, which increases the load 300%. Like, it's so weird. And with the knee OA stuff, like and being overweight, like we tell people you need to lose weight to decrease the loads on the knee. But then ironically, what happens in a subset of people, they increase the load on the knee because they take longer steps and they walk more. So and then they do fine 18 months later, even though the knee load is greater. So we really need to like change or just question our view of, is load a force for good or evil, would be the idea. And I'm not saying losing weight isn't a viable treatment strategy for knee OA. It's just, it's probably occurring it's helpful for some other mechanism besides changing the load on the knee. Would be the big idea there.
Yeah. Right. It's almost as if there's more than one factor that's involved when it comes to pain.
Certainly is. Yeah, we just get caught up in really simplistic. I had a nice meeting with a knee OA researcher this morning. We talked about that stuff, right? We just get caught up on certain surrogate measures like knee strength and we'll judge a treatment because, that treatment's no good, like manual therapy, because it won't, increase your knee strength. And I'm like, so what? Your assumption there is that knee strength is the thing that has to change for someone to get better. Maybe they just need to feel more confident and safe and taken care of and have a locus of control. And the manual therapy helps them do that. And then they start walking more and engaging in their life more and being happier again. And boom, they get better.
Right. Yeah, it's just you saying that. I'm just trying to get in the minds of some other people who still really live in the biomechanical world. And I think that's really hard for people to accept, that it isn't just strength that makes people get better when they're recovering from pain. And we have research in a few areas now that show that when you're doing exercise, strength exercises, people can often feel a little bit better because of that. But it's not necessarily because they gained an ability to produce more force if you measure it before and after. So, I think there's often more than one thing that's going on when people are getting better, and
for sure,
we don't always know, right?
No, we certainly don't. That's okay. Doesn't mean you can't help people. Like you can invest in the stock market and you don't know why your stocks went up. Like it's a super complex system. Right. But you still know how to, maybe increase your savings.
Right. Yeah. Right? You can still detect some patterns, right?
Yeah. There's trends that people know. You don't know exactly what caused Apple stock to go up.
Yeah.
It's not like the price of child labor decreased. Anyways.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
It's
the worst.
Yeah. Greg, have you always been
this much of a dick? This critical? Yeah.
How'd you know? Yes, actually, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Have you always been this way?
Yeah. I've loved questioning things, and I've been surrounded by people that have. When I was an undergrad, even before I had PDFs, I would randomly read the stacks, and I always had questions. And I had good professors in my undergrad that were really good at challenging stuff as well. And they rewarded questions that I would have. They would never shut me down. It just continued. Yeah. And same with my master's. And it was just my thing. And then I had certain biases against things, and questioning them would help support that.
This is a huge reason why I respect you so much. And it's because you are critical of things. And it's not just other people's points that you have a bias against, although I'm sure that has happened before. But it's also your own biases and your own beliefs. So on that topic, are there things that you have really changed your mind about in the past? And I think if so, it would be really useful for people to hear your rationale and your thought process about why you changed your mind.
So I haven't had any massive epiphanies. I swear I was really lucky. Before I went to chiro school, I did my master's with 2 chiros doing their PhD. And so I never had any of the manual therapy mumbo jumbo and, joints out of place and all that stuff. And my thesis was all about the neurophysiological mechanisms of spine manipulation, and all that stuff. So I was really lucky. And I remember going to like active release technique courses. They talk about breaking up adhesions and tissues. And I'm like, I think this helps people, but I don't think we're doing that. And I was super comfortable taking a pragmatic approach to helping people. So I remember being in my 4th year at chiropractic college. They're like, Greg, why are you cracking the back? What joint is out of place? And I'm like, no joint's out of place. Well, what segment are you cracking? The lumbar segment. Like, what's your reference? Like Lehman, 2001, motherfucker. Like, I think they have pain. That's it. That's enough. They hurt. It's safe to try manipulation. I'm going to do it. Yeah. Or like an active release. I remember they would just do the whole body. They would just do manual therapy throughout the whole body. And they think, oh, it's the anatomy trains. And they pull out Tom Meyer's book. And I'm like, hey, you just got the person moving. And I'm like, but I'll still do this pragmatically. This is helpful. So I never really got into that stuff. So the changes I've made through the years that actually I've kind of softened in some of my criticism, trying to I'd probably say no too quickly to certain things. Oh, that's bullshit. Because the mechanism doesn't work that way. Like I'd say, oh, Shirley Sarman's stuff or the kinesiopath model. Oh, that's garbage. Who cares if the knee caves in? But now, or at least not now, I'd say the past 10 years, I've been more like, it's not bullshit. You're still going to help a lot of people with the kinesiopathological model. It's just not helpful for that reason. That's I've softened in things. And same, actually, I'm not against manual therapy. I don't really do it much anymore, but I also don't want to denigrate manual therapy or stretching or yoga. And I would denigrate stretching in the past because I'm saying, well, what's the point of stretching? You're not really going to lengthen the connective tissue. You're not going to make the person stronger. And then I'm like, well, why, is that a reason to hate stretching? That could still help someone with knee pain for some other reason. So I try to expand my criticism to maybe give people more options almost. That's how I've changed through the years. Like if I'm really critical, I'm like, oh no, there could be something else going on here. I should stop saying no so quickly to things.
Right. Maybe you could say no quickly to those mechanisms, but not necessarily the utility.
Yeah. That's it exactly. Someone was talked about stretching the other day to help with their patients. And I was like, yeah, it doesn't do the things we thought. And I was really against stretching 20 years ago. I was like the original physio hipster. And people say runners shouldn't stretch. It won't decrease injuries. And I'm like, oh, well, I agree with that. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't stretch that. Or they'll be like, it'll make them less stiff and it'll decrease performance. I'm like, well, that's not true. It won't do that. But that doesn't mean they shouldn't stretch. There's potentially other benefits if you're in pain with stretching. And in order to denigrate it, you would need a good research study that compares stretching for, say, knee pain versus strengthening. And we have a few of those. And guess what? Strengthening doesn't outperform stretching. It's bonkers to me. And yet I would have denigrated it 10 years ago. And I'm an asshole. I apologize to all those people.
I don't think so. So you said that stretching won't decrease stiffness, and
it doesn't decrease joint stiffness. It decreases muscle stiffness in a tiny way if you're able to measure it, but it's very complicated. It certainly won't change tendon or connective tissue stiffness in the long term. It does in the short term, but that's like viscoelastic things. So it's kind of cool. Stretching tendons might actually change the viscoelastic properties of a tendon, but they just won't be less stiff. In fact, they might be more stiff in some ways, but that's another topic.
So stretching can make tendons more stiff.
So it depends how you measure stiffness. There's something called the hysteresis loop, which is just there's a difference in the response to load on the way up of loading something, and then when you relax. Stretching seems, in some studies, changes the relaxation part of that curve, where it's actually kind of more stiff. It's mind blowing. It means the tendon's more efficient, which is so cool. But it
Right.
makes sense if you watch dancers or gymnasts or sprinters through the years who are incredibly powerful and super flexible, and they stretch all the time. Anyways,
It's so interesting. Yeah, no,
I love that stuff.
it's fascinating. Yeah. You said very briefly that you don't do manual therapy a ton anymore.
Oh,
Why is
yeah,
that?
I'm not against it. It's just that people,
Yeah.
like you asked me earlier, who's coming to see me. I get a lot of like more consulting and online stuff and coaching, and people want to know things and exercise, and they've had lots of manual therapy in the past. So, if I'm just going to see someone once every 3 weeks, it's probably not worthwhile or something like that. It's just it was not a conscious decision. I really believe it. I think if you're in practice, people are going to come for you for manual therapy. It's totally fine to give that to them. And then when you're doing manual therapy, you get to talk to them. And that's where you get to talk about health and load management and all these other things. But most people aren't going to come to you wanting to talk to you about health and load management and all those other things. They expect that manual therapy. And if we're going to be patient-centered, there's nothing wrong with doing that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'm really against I'm against people who are so against it for whatever reasons.
So you're saying that it's in general a really good idea to take a comprehensive approach to rehab. And while strength might not be the issue, it could still be a good idea to do strengthening exercises for other reasons. You can still run, you can still stretch. And also manual therapy, I guess, would feed into that comprehensive approach as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would think so. Yeah.
Is there anyone that you...
Sorry, go ahead.
You go ahead. I'll get back to it.
I was just saying there's so many, we have to, like, people are so different. And I really think, again, this being critical should increase your options, right? That's it. We close too many doors, right? And I think we should be looking at how many, like, it's great to help people with exercise for knee OA, but I wouldn't throw manual therapy under the bus. And that's what the research tells me. I wouldn't even throw passive modalities under the bus, which is amazing to me because I can't believe I'm saying that now. But if you honestly look at the systematic reviews, exercise is not outperforming passive modalities for people with knee OA, which is just bonkers. I can't, like 20 years ago, I'd be so against modalities and all that stuff, because it just didn't fit with what my biases were. And
in what way does it not outperform?
When you look at the systematic reviews,
but what outcome?
Pain and function.
Oh, function too,
and not just pain, function. Right.
Yeah.
This is the thing. Like, it's so unbelievable. But you won't see them recommended in clinical practice guidelines. Yet you'll see reviews showing that they're okay. Because often what happens in the clinical practice guideline is people voting, and it's their opinion that gets into the practice guideline. So they'll say, oh, those passive interventions, they didn't have good control groups, we shouldn't recommend them. But exercise never has a good control group, and I'm still going to recommend it. Yeah. So I don't know. Oh, I just want options for people.
Yeah. It's a nice way of looking at things. That's why after I took your course that everything was a little bit more simple in my practice, because I thought you had to be so much more specific before, and I didn't have as many options, realizing that, like many things work. Just because the mechanisms aren't what we say they are, that doesn't mean that they're not useful.
No, and I'm not saying like we as clinicians need to provide everyone with lots of options. We could double down on things they love. Like I love prescribing heavy load. I feel comfortable doing that. So that's what I'm going to do, right? I'm not going to pull out an ultrasound machine. But at the same time, I can't tell someone, oh, you suck because you have an ultrasound machine. Does that
it does. Make sense? It does. It's just, it's so interesting though, because that's always the argument against passive modalities like ultrasound or TENS. It's that anything can be useful for pain, whether the ultrasound machine is on or off, it can be useful for pain. But exercise is the best because it gets people stronger and healthier and improves their function. But I find it really interesting that when you look at the passive modalities, that they can increase function as well. I wasn't aware of that.
Because if you have less pain, what are you going to end up doing often? You
Yeah.
might be more active.
Mm-hmm.
And that's function. That's mobility.
Right.
That's less disability. So I don't know if a passive modality will increase your timed up and go or something like that, or your number of like squats you can do. But that's like a very crude measure of function. Function is like, how did you feel when you went to the grocery store today? Right? Oh, my knee felt better. Okay, good. We improved your function. You got to go to the grocery store. You had less disability and suffering. Do you know what I mean? That's what people care about. They don't care that they did their timed up and go in half a second shorter or whatever it is.
Right. Yeah, we have so many weird outcomes in the studies, but the most important one is, does the person feel better? Are they enjoying their life more? Do they feel more confident? Do they feel like they have a better ability to deal with their own pain?
Yeah. I mean, people who don't have knee OA, like, what is it? I think it's only 13% of people really exercise. People just don't want to. That's the thing. Like, you could be like, oh, you exercise, you'll improve your function. Like, I'm fine with my function. I'll go with my friends and drink beer and just like hang out at home. And you know what I mean? Like, they're okay. Like, people don't, if we're, again, with patient-centered care, are we forcing onto them what we think is important? Right. That's the issue.
Yeah. And most physios are, maybe I'm generalizing too much here, but do like exercise, and they do like living a healthy lifestyle and playing sports. And that's why we got into this originally. So maybe we are pushing things onto people too much.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong for advocating for health, but people have to get to the stage where that's what they want themselves.
Yeah.
And again, this is the thing of options, especially with rehab. If our goal is to advocate for health, we should be open to how many different ways you can do it, right? So someone with knee OA, do they really need to do squats? Can they just go for a walk? Can they hike? Can they go on the trampoline? Can they rock climb? Right? Whatever they want, can they garden? Right? Those are the things that. And so if you just get caught up on knee strength, you're going to ignore all these other options that we have for people.
Yeah. Do you have time for a couple more questions, Greg?
Yeah, I got 5 minutes. I got to talk with Jimmy at 1:10. Jimmy, what's the guy? PT Pint? The Pint guy? He's out of the States.
I don't know.
Jimmy something. Sure. I want to say Walker, but that's not it. I don't know. Yeah.
So coming at this from a business perspective, because unfortunately, PTs only get paid when they see people. Yep. If someone comes to you with knee OA and you tell them that, hey, you have a lot of options, anything could work. Do you want to walk more? Go do that. I think some people might hear that and think, I can't keep this person as a client because they're going to be off on their own very quickly. So what's your advice there?
My advice is we need to keep the good people in this profession to not leave. It's okay to see people 3 more times than you think. You can still provide value here. And so you want to come up with the areas that you think you can provide value, right? So some of that would be follow-ups. I would never just say, oh, just go out and walk more, right? If you're taking a functional approach like that of activity, it's about coaching now. I need you to come back because we got to check your mileage and we're going to track how much you're doing. You know, you're getting to the behavior change world. So that you still have value. You're going to see them 3 weeks from now and check in and see how they're doing. And then you can start saying there's other things that we can add here. If you talk about knee OA as a system-wide thing, now you start talking about it's the health of the whole system, and it's aerobic exercise, it's physical activity. You know, so there's still lots that you can provide here.
Right.
So that, yeah. And you know, you can still do manual therapy and things like that. Right? Because that's like whatever it is that you offer, then you go with that.
Okay, that's good advice.
Don't feel. I hate the stuff online again. So I grew up in the ART world, and the experts would be like, I get everyone better in 1 to 2 visits. Well, bullshit. Number one, and then that's a crappy business model. You don't. It's okay to see people. a number of times, like there's still value here, especially in just checking in with them and asking and providing knowledge and the questions that we can answer.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of really well-meaning physios have guilt about seeing people too often, but I guess if they realize that the value that they could give someone, there's less of a reason to have that guilt.
Yeah, it's almost like what I would recommend, and I don't work this way, it doesn't work for me, but I've thought about it, is like you can almost create a program, that's that for almost every condition, where it's like it's 5 to 7 sessions, and this is what you work on each session. That would be my thought process for people who are hesitant about that. Like, this is what we're gonna do first, and it's like education and activity and exercise based. You just tailor it to the person. That might help for some people like that. Because here's the problem when you just tell people, oh, go just do whatever you want. That's not really going to help change their behavior. People, like, I used to always pay for running coaches when I was running. It wasn't because I needed someone, like, I could design my own programs. I just wanted someone else to do it for me, and people will pay for that. And so that's kind of what you're doing. Like, you're gonna create their activity program for the next few weeks when they come in. You're gonna check on their movements and exercises or whatever if you want to do that.
Yeah,
I don't know. That's my thought there.
Thank you for sharing that, Greg. Where can people learn a bit more about you? Where can they connect with you? And do you have anything else that you maybe want to plug at the end of this podcast?
Well, my website's greglehman.ca, and then Twitter is probably where I'm most online. A little bit on Instagram. I don't like it as much, and that's just Greg Lehman again. Yeah. So all the stuff I'm selling is there.
Okay.
No, my running course. I do have my running course. I think it's great. My 2 online courses, what I'm happy about them is, like, and I will plug this. I think people charge too much. And so we put our rates $200 or $300 lower than everyone else for that stuff. But if you take the online course, and I've taken way too many courses to realize that they were shit, and I wish I wanted my money back. But if you take the online course, you get to apply that to the in-person course. It counts as a coupon. Yeah, that's my favorite thing that I made up. I thought a lot of other people would follow me in doing that.
Yeah. And I could vouch for reconciling biomechanics with pain science. It was amazing. And I will be taking the running one, I guess online first, because I don't know when you'll be doing it in Toronto.
Me neither. I have to, like, that's the thing. If anyone's listening and they want to host me somewhere in the world, let me know. I don't really go out of my way to, like, go and find spots. I should do that.
You're just recruited and you show up.
Yeah, that's it. I'm not like the best business. It's not true. I'm in Australia again this September, and I do go out of my way to, like, if I get one invite to Australia, then I'll go out and get some more. So I do it for some places.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. And I'll try to do, I'm going to do a running course in December, like next year for sure. Then I'll do something in Toronto. In Toronto. Yeah. Toronto, December.
This coming December or 2024?
No, I'm full this year. I think, I'm pretty full this year.
Okay.
2023 is bonkers. Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe I'll see you then.
Sure. Yeah. It's a long time.
Okay.
I just realized that. It's only 20. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it is. I won't take too much more of your time, Greg, but I really, really am appreciative for you coming on. I hope everybody learned something. I know I always do when I speak to you or listen to you. So you're really, really appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you once again for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed it, please consider leaving a review. If you would like to follow me on social media, you can follow me at noahmandel.physio on Instagram and TikTok. Have a wonderful day, and remember to keep moving forward.